Hey guys, Eric here. Was going to try to knock out a really quick video here. This is the fight between Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier 2. The reason that they're not showing Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier 3 is because that fight was very competitive, and it's possible that Daniel Cormier won it. I think Stipe won that fight, but it was close. And then the fight after that for Stipe was when he faced Francis Ngannou, where he got knocked unconscious. Obviously, the UFC has a vested interest in making sure that this fight gets promoted as best as possible. So, of course, they're going to put the last time Stipe was dominant. This fight is very old at this point. I think it's 5+ years old, maybe 6. So, this is what we're going to be going over. You're going to see some techniques that Daniel Cormier is going to use on Stipe that I think Jon Jones will use on Stipe. And then I'll kind of go over some of the stuff that I think Stipe could possibly do to win this fight this coming Saturday. So one of the first things that I noticed is that Stipe gets hit with leg kicks pretty heavily in the early part of this round. He takes 3 unchecked leg kicks before anything really occurs where he stops it. Leg kicks don't really become a factor in this fight, but I did just want to highlight this because Jon Jones does kick to the leg and he will teep to the thigh and he'll stomp to the knee. So I could see this being a factor for Jon Jones. This is going to be an unchecked, really hard outside leg kick here by Cormier. Stipe actually checks one of these kicks in the second round. I'm not going to highlight it too much, but I do think that Stipe is going to be wanting to be in a position to check kicks as much as possible, early as possible, because I could see Jon Jones just going to the leg right away. So what we're going to see next from Daniel Cormier here is he is going to fight the hands. So he's going to bring his hands out. He's going to be fighting hands, and he's going to dip off to his right side, throw the left overhand. He's going to drop in for a head outside single, go up to a high crotch, and end up getting the takedown. The reason I'm highlighting this is because I think Jon Jones could do something very similar. Jon Jones likes to fight hands. He likes to reach. He likes to fight the hands. He likes to use that to set up elbows, to set up strikes at range. And then when guys try to overcommit towards him, he shoots in. Kind of similar shot here coming up as to what Jon Jones ended up getting on a Ciryl Gane. Not exactly the same thing. It is different. Jon Jones slipped a punch and then came in, but it's still just control of knowing where the hand's going to be. In this fight, what you'll notice is Daniel Cormier fights hands a lot, like a lot. And he kind of big brothers Stipe through a lot of this fight. He extends his arms out, he fights hands, and then when he's extended out and he knows his hands are where they're at and he's in front of him, he snaps those punches off from that position. If you didn't know any better, you would think that Daniel Cormier watching this fight was actually the taller guy, just judging by the way that he's kind of like using his hands. Again, Jon Jones being the tall guy, being the longer guy with his arms, he does this a lot. And I could see him absolutely using this against Stipe. So we'll watch what happens. Fights the hands, goes for the overhand left, shoots in for the head outside, goes into a high crotch position, has to kind of whip this back and forth for a bit to make this work. This is Daniel Cormier's specialty, gets the high crotch. Now the big problem I think Daniel does wrong here is that he doesn't immediately transition. He kind of allows Stipe to get settled, to get ready for the slam and to get ready for the scramble. Cormier kind of realizes that he can kind of feel him shifting, so he kind of shifts him off to the side. Stipe gets into a half guard position, fights the arm, and this would be a pretty bad spot in most cases with Jon Jones on top of you, just because of Jon Jones' ground game and his top game is so good. I just think that if Jon Jones gets here on Stipe, this is a really rough time, especially early in the, I wouldn't say early, but mid in the first round. So one of the things that I think Stipe does really well here is that he starts pushing on the head, he's controlling the wrist, he's squeezing his thighs together, and he kind of shifts his body side to side to kind of extend Daniel Cormier away from him, forcing Daniel Cormier to stand up. He's going to feel like he's losing position, so he stands up. And right here, Daniel Cormier pushes hips in. He's going to grab the feet, and what he's trying to do, he's trying to throw those feet off to the side, or he's trying to flip Stipe over himself. Stipe goes to grab the leg. Stipe kicks up and he kicks towards the head here. He actually gets a really nice head kick. And right, I think here, there it is. Daniel reacts correctly. He drops in, gets under the legs, rolls Stipe over. Stipe gets into a scramble position. They scramble, 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 and then they end up basically with Stipe in a head kind of inside low single, almost like trying to go for this like twisting the knee over. Here's the problem with this, and you'll see this from the angle here in a second. He has nowhere to go with this. He really needs to run circular towards him, and he needs to push Daniel Cormier where the cage kind of is. You can see Daniel Cormier's both his feet are on the cage, and he'll get pushed against the cage here in a second, and there's nowhere for him to go. That's really where he needed to push him through, and it's just not going to be available. One of the things I try to tell guys is head outside singles for the most part kind of winds you up in pretty bad positions. This is why you don't really want to go for them in MMA. In wrestling, it's great, but your head is stuck in a position where you can get hit, and your other arm is now trapped when you fail on this. And so you end up in this position right here. And what you'll notice is Daniel is able to just drop heavy bombs. And honestly, I think Stipe might go a little out here for a second. I just think he's super tough and kind of grins and he just bears through that whole scenario, comes up for the head inside, and the head inside is much better. This is a better position, but even now he's low. This is just not the greatest spot, and you're going to see, again, Daniel here is just going to be throwing pretty hard shots, really hard shots, really hard shots, really hard elbows. And if this wasn't the end of the round, I think Stipe maybe starts to work his way up. Stipe's just got a steel head. He's got a fire hydrant for a head. It's pretty hard for me to give Stipe any credit for that round. I think he lost pretty much in every way. He lost in the wrestling, he lost in the grappling, and he lost in the striking. So one of the first things that I see him start off this round with that I think would be useful for him is kind of feinting his way in and throwing half-step jabs. He is a pretty big dude, and when he hits guys, even with the jab, it's pretty significant. I just think that's really useful for somebody like Jon Jones and for somebody like Cormier. You got to keep Cormier back. You got to keep Jon Jones back. You don't want him fighting hands the whole time. You need to kind of keep it a little bit longer, more to boxing range. So in a second here, you're going to see Stipe check a really good kick there, and I actually think that kind of shuts down Daniel Cormier wanting to really throw kicks to the legs for the rest of the fight. I do think that's something that Stipe wants to do against Jones as soon as possible, and I highlight it, and that's the only check I believe in this whole fight, but it's super important. I think he does need to get going on that pretty early. So right here, what we're going to see is Daniel Cormier reach out for Stipe's hands. This is a technique that I've seen Jon Jones use on people where he's kind of reaching, fighting hands, and he kind of comes around and hits them with elbows and so forth. I think if Jon Jones implements a strategy where he's trying to control hands on Stipe has to kind of come back with these kinds of knees, and you'll see it right here. Really good knee to the body. I think that's a really good shot for Stipe. So if he does end up in this scenario where Jon Jones is kind of bullying him forward and trying to like grab his hands and like try to tie up his hands, he has to go for these like little short shots like these knees. And again, we're in a position where you'll notice that Stipe is kind of being the shorter fighter here. Daniel Cormier is actually being the longer one. He's reaching out, grabbing the hands. He's got his arms extended. And this actually brings Stipe's hands close to him, which makes it possible for Cormier to know when Stipe is going to throw. So he's got a lot more time because the hands aren't near him and his hands are right next to his face. What Stipe does here is smart. He tries to go back for that knee. It kind of ends up being like a weird knee kick to the body. That right there. And again, I think that's a really useful technique for Stipe to implement in this upcoming fight. Again, I could see that happening. I could see Jon Jones coming in trying to fight hands, frame. You got to come in and knee him. This is the extended position I was talking about. Daniel Cormier essentially adopting a long guard, almost like a tie stance weirdly here. And, right hand out, left hand out, he's controlling. You can see where Stipe's arms are. Stipe wants to turn this into a boxing match, and Daniel's just kind of forcing him back, grabbing hands, and then just taking like little pot shots at him. You'll kind of see him do it right here, grabs the hands and then throws little pot shots, and then just pressures forward again, starts grabbing hands again, just goes immediately in for hands, grabs hands, just fighting hands nonstop, you'll notice, and then it just hits. And that is something that if Stipe engages with and doesn't do things to solve with Jon Jones, I think is actually going to be even worse, because Jon Jones is going to come in for elbows, he's going to come in for knees, he'll teep to the body, he'll teep down to the thigh, and then also he'll use that to set up his shots. Stipe hits hard. naturally hard, and he's going to probably take a lot of hits in this fight, unfortunately, standing. But I do think that if he can get his jab going on somebody like Jon Jones, Jon Jones is not known to take punches particularly well, in my opinion. I think when he starts getting hit, he kind of he really doesn't like it. Like Daniel Cormier is pretty tough. He'll take a hard shot and take an ass whooping. I feel like Jon Jones just really genuinely doesn't like to box. You know, he likes to be the hammer, not the nail. So I think if you start putting a jab in his face, start breaking him down a bit with a jab, that'd be a good option for Stipe. Again, hard guy to hit, but you'll see Stipe kind of lands some jabs here. Little double jab. He gets hit real hard here too, but then he comes right back with his jab. And again, like when he lands his jab, it just has an effect. Like you can see how Daniel Cormier's whole body moves away. It's just a much bigger effect for Stipe when he lands a punch than when Daniel Cormier does. And frankly, I think Daniel Cormier hits a lot harder than Jon Jones. What we're going to see now is Stipe is going to get poked in the eye by Daniel Cormier's thumb. And the reason I'm highlighting this is because there's a good chance this is going to happen in the fight with Jon Jones. I mean, we all know Jon Jones pokes people in the eyes when he fights them because he's a dirty fighter. And also they've recently changed the gloves back to the old gloves, which are actually easier to poke people in the eyes. So chances are he's going to poke Stipe in the eye. But the reason I'm highlighting this is because Stipe, even when he's getting beat up, he is dangerous. And you can see he just landed an uppercut and then he lands a really hard jab there, and it has some effect. So Stipe is not the kind of guy who's just going to wilt because he gets poked in the eye. Now, again, severity matters. If he got poked really bad, doesn't matter who you are. So right here, he's going to go for an uppercut and miss it. And then Daniel Cormier is going to come into a underhook position, and Stipe is going to frame and use that to strike. I think this is a good move for Stipe also against Jon Jones. I could see something similar happening. Jon Jones slipping down to his right side. Something looks like this, coming in for the underhook because Jon Jones trying to clinch, and then you frame him. You end up framing him off here and then hits that right hand. And again, Stipe hits hard. So, you know, if he can land some strikes like that, that could make a big difference in this fight. At this point, they posted the total strikes landed. Cormier's 80 to Stipe's 19. This, again, I think just goes to show that this initially wasn't that close of a fight. Stipe ends up winning this fight, but Daniel Cormier could have won this fight, like really could have. That being said, it's also a testament to just how tough Stipe is. I mean, Stipe is taking incredibly hard shots here over and over again. Again, he ends up winning this fight, and he ends up winning the next fight with Daniel Cormier, where he also takes a lot of strikes. Here, the two men end up in a 50-50 position. Stipe is going to drive Cormier back to the cage and then end up driving both arms, double underhooks. Cormier accepts, brings the arms up. Stipe starts kneeing. I don't think this will be as easy to do against Jon Jones. Jon Jones, from everybody, testament who's gone against him, they all just talk about how strong he is in the clinch and pushing back. Stipe is a legit heavyweight though, so it might be actually a scenario where Jon Jones is not just able to muscle Stipe around. Also, Stipe has a crazy gas tank, so it would be interesting to see Jon Jones over a course having somebody like Stipe, just a grinder in there with him, also clinching. But I have to imagine that if I'm in Stipe's camp, I'm trying to probably avoid us getting into clinch work like this, even though right now he's obviously winning, but I don't know how well he will do against Jon Jones in this scenario. And here's a difference in the power between Daniel Cormier and Stipe. They both end up landing a few shots here, but when Stipe lands, it just throws Daniel Cormier off to the side. Again, Jon Jones is not a heavy hitter. This is the biggest advantage I think Stipe really brings, is that two advantages that he brings. One, he can absorb a lot of damage if he has to. Two, he hits significantly harder than anybody else Jon Jones has probably faced. I'm going through the memory logs right now, but I mean, a Cyril Gane, I guess, technically hit really hard, but a Cyril Gane can't fucking wrestle to save his life. And I don't think a Cyril Gane showed up at all that night for that fight. Stipe actually hits like significantly hard, really, really hard. So I could see it being a big factor for somebody like Jon Jones. Right out the gate in the third round, Stipe throws a jab to the body and then a teep to the body. I actually think Stipe should probably throw more teeps to the body in general. Again, he's a big dude. I think you just got to have more than one weapon with somebody like Jon Jones. You need to make him think that you're going to kick so that your hands are more likely to land. That's a solid tee. In open space, Stipe does pretty good. He's going to dip here in a second and come up with a left hook and a 2. So he's going to dip in, comes around, hits the 2. Really nice shot. And again, that's something I actually could see him landing on Jon Jones. Kind of dips in, gets the reaction. Jon Jones reacts, gets hit with the right hand. He's been known to get hit with the right hand. It's not uncommon for him to get hit with crosses. He got beat up pretty bad with Gustafsson with right hands. He got beat up pretty bad with Reyes with straights. When he's facing a taller guy who can throw fast straights and hide them behind feints and footwork, he does get hit. So in a second, you're going to see a lot of head movement, kind of up and down motions from Stipe. Again, I think this is really useful, just helping to kind of set up and hide his punches. And you kind of see right here, he kind of motion. And you can just see like Daniel Cormier kind of has that, I don't know what's coming, I'm going to disengage. I think just, even though there's a little awkward and herky-jerky, I think him doing that is useful. Having a little bit of unpredictableness in his motions is, I think, important. He tends to be very just kind of like walk at you when he's throwing. If he can add in a little bit of motion, a little bit of feints, a little bit of herky-jerkiness, even if it looks bad, it will be hard to register when he's going to throw. This is something else I think could be useful for Stipe. Stipe just needs to kind of make this an ugly fight. I think if it becomes super technical, then Jon Jones is more than likely going to win. I think if I'm in Stipe's camp, you have to have the attitude. I'm coming out there. This is going to be ugly. I'm going to throw weird shit. I'm going to get into weird exchanges. Stuff that looks like this, where he's kind of exchanging back and forth. He's taking shots, coming forward, coming to these weird, awkward clench positions, going for weird, like awkward throws. A lot of this kind of stuff. I think you really just got to make it an uncomfortable fight to where you are just dirty boxing him, you're beating him up, you're getting in his face, you're putting your head in his head. I just think you have to get into these wild kind of exchanges. I think if you just turned it into kind of a point battle, Jon Jones is probably going to win. Stipe is a threat wrestling, and I think people don't appreciate that. This is a good example. He starts hitting Cormier. They get into a lot of wild exchanges like this, and this going back to, I think he needs to make it ugly. But if he gets this double under position, he's a strong dude. He's pushing in, pulls Daniel Cormier across, drags him down, forces Daniel Cormier to ride up. Really good on riding the back. People forget what he did to Francis Ngannou the first time they faced each other. He threw around a big dude for a while. Now, Francis was not a great wrestler at that time, but Daniel Cormier is a really, really good wrestler, and he ended up pulling him down here. So it's not impossible for Stipe to wrestle with Jon Jones. It's just not very likely. Here is more or less the end of the fight. Stipe is fighting hands. He's going to come in and kind of throw a 45-degree shovel punch to Daniel Cormier's liver right here. And this is a pretty hard shot. And you're going to see Daniel does not like that at all. And it's a really clean shot. It's easily the cleanest shot that Stipe threw the whole fight. And it's a good punch. And Stipe is going to go back to this over and over again till the end of the round. And basically, this is what kind of causes the knockout. And right here, we are going to see the end of the fight. Stipe is actually going to win hand position right here for a second. It's going to allow him to throw that body shot again. That's going to set up this right hand over the top. Daniel Cormier has been throwing this overhead left and slipping down to his right side over and over and over again. Every time he's in trouble and he gets clipped right on the chin, he doesn't get out of the way in time, and that puts him way off balance. And he is going to get wobbled really bad here. And Stipe is good at finishing. Throws another right hand, throws a weird right hand over the top. Daniel Cormier starts to fold and just eats 3 or 4 shots, and that is it. Up to that point, and all of those left shovel punches to the body, all those 45 uppercuts, whatever you want to call them. I would say Stipe was not winning this fight. Stipe can definitely come back from behind. He can come back from getting beaten on. He is tough. He will grind. He'll go out on a shield to try to win. You can look at the Francis Ngannou fight. If I'm being forced to bet currently, I would say Jon Jones is probably going to win. He's a 6-1 favorite to win for a reason. I do think that is a little bit too big of a difference. I don't think it should be 6-1. but there's a reason that it's 6-1. The last time Stipe fought was 4 years ago. It was against Francis Ngannou. He was knocked unconscious in that fight really badly. The fight that he had before that was against Daniel Cormier to a 3-round decision that was close. He hasn't been active in a very long time. Jon Jones fought 2 years ago against Asir Gan. Now, I don't really take that fight too seriously because I think Asir Gan barely showed up and doesn't know how to wrestle. He's still been more active. Also, when you look at the styles of how these two fight, Miocic tends to kind of come from behind. I think that if he ends up on the ground in the first round with somebody like Jon Jones on top of him, there's a good chance the fight's going to get ended. That being said, I don't think you can count Stipe out at all. Stipe can take a hell of a shot. He is very, very, very hard to hurt. The last person to put him out was Francis Ngannou, who could put out anybody on earth. I do think that Stipe is able to win this fight. I just think that it's not very likely. Stipe has knocked out the who's who of the heavyweight division. It is totally possible for him to clip Jon Jones and put him out. Also, Stipe is very hard to put out. The last guy that put him out was Francis Ngannou, but he's faced a lot of heavy hitters at the heavyweight division. I don't think Jon Jones is going to put him unconscious with punches. I could, however, see Jon Jones getting into a full mount position, or let's say a half guard position, and dropping elbows or ground and pound of some sort, cutting Stipe, kneeing him, so forth, causing the fight to be ended that way. I will say this: if Jon Jones doesn't go out and absolutely dominate Stipe, I don't think that it helps his legacy at all. I think if Stipe comes out, makes this a very competitive fight, and then it doesn't look like a very good fight, it looks like two old men fighting each other, and it goes to a decision and Jon Jones wins, I think it hurts Jon Jones' legacy quite a bit because he should have faced Tom Aspinall. So as much as Jon Jones wants to act like this is a legacy fight and it's going to help his legacy, there's a chance that it doesn't. You were competitive with a 41-year-old man who hasn't fought in 4 years, and the last time he fought, he was knocked unconscious. That was a competitive fight for you. People will look at Tom Aspinall and you and clearly say there's no chance that you could beat him. Anyways, that's my breakdown on the fight. Hopefully some people watch this one. I don't think it's going to get a lot of traction, but that's okay. It's useful just to kind of to see some things that you could try in your fight game. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Appreciate it.